Hey everyone, welcome back again to Game 5D. In this video, I will show you how to set up constrained or restricted grab interactions, also known as the transformables, and how do they work. I have tried to provide subjective use of each of these transformable to give you a better idea about how you can use them in your own VR app. I would also request you all to watch till the end of the video as it covers many crucial points that will help you identify issues with certain transformable that may not work the way you intended to be and where to look for the fix. I hope you all are excited to learn, so without any further ado, let's begin. Alright, let's begin by setting up our first transformer, which is called the one grab translate transformer for both of our hands and controllers. To show you a better use of it, what I did is that I duplicated the non-physics interactables we had earlier from one of the previous videos. If you haven't watched any of the previous interactions videos, I do recommend watching them first so that you would understand the current state of the project. The only thing that I added next is that these cubes to act as the base of the sliders to give us a more feel of an actual slider lever in our VR app. Alright, so the way the grab transformer works is that we have these optionals for one grab transformer and two grab transformers, and this is what allows us to set up our constraint transformers for our grab interactions. And by default, Unity uses a free transformer which allows us to grab an object and move freely once we have it grabbed. And to show you that, if I hit play, you would see that a script called one grab free transformer has been assigned to the grab interactable. And if I open up the grabbable optionals again, the same script has been assigned by default to the one grab transformer, and that sets up a free constraint to allow us to move the grab interactable for both of our hand and controller. So we'll be modifying or we'll be assigning a new transformer to allow us to translate or constrain our translation for our interactable. So the script is called one grab translate transformer, and you have to search for it in that component, and you'd see, if you don't see it, just search for one grab because that thing has been renamed from one hand to one grab. And you could see there are few different transformers as well, but for now we'll begin with the translate transformer. Once assigned the script, let me just close this rigid body to have a better look. So the way this works is that it requires, or it takes a set of constraints, or it allows us to define the set of constraints for each of these axes, and these axes define in what particular in what extent or to what extent we can move our object in. You'd also see that there's a checkbox under the constraints which is called constraints are relative. So what this allows us to do is that, let's say if you want to move a object from its relative position, not in absolute position but from its relative position, so once you do that, it will take the same position you are currently in, and it will add or subtract the minimum and maximum position from it, so you'll get a relative position out of it. So with our current setup, what we actually want to do is that we have these individual directions. The right is the rate or the x-axis, the forward is the z-axis, and top is the y-axis. So we want to only move our lever along the z-axis. So what I will do is I will constrain the min x and max x to stay at the same position. Same goes for the min y and max y. I will copy paste the current position of the maximum and minimum y so that I don't want any movement on the y or x axis. And let me close down these first. Alright, so the main thing that I wanted or we wanted the lever to work is that we want to have a min z position, which is our current position. So I'll copy the current position of z, and then let me move the interactable to the max position I want the constraint to apply on, and I'll copy the same z value to the max constraint, and I'll reapply the original or the previous value to have the lever set up in our main position. Alright, so once that's set up, the next thing that we have to do is we have to drag and drop this transformer into one grab transformer. Make sure you do that. Otherwise Unity is going to take the free transformer again if you don't have it assigned. And one more thing that you have to check on, that the max selecting interactors is at least set to 1, or if you don't have it set, or set it to -1, that will also work. But just remember to keep a check on that. Now let's do the same thing for the hand interactable we had. We'll assign the same script, one grab translate transformer. In this particular translation, we wanted to move on the x-axis, so I'll constrain all the three, but I will keep the values same for the z and y-axis. So let me copy the y first on both the min and max so that it doesn't move anywhere. Same goes for the z. Let me copy the z values for min and max. So the min and max always stays at the same z position. And in the x, let me copy the minimum and maximum value of the x and constrain it on the x-axis. Alright, reapplying the original position, and make sure the max interactors are set to 1, and in the grabbable the one grab transformer is assigned. Alright, with that we have our first translator set up. Alright, now let's see how this works. So I can grab the interactable with a controller, but I cannot move it on the x and y axis, but only on the z axis as per our need. It also taking the max and min values into account and not allowing me to move beyond that absolute position we had set up. And if you're wondering why I have still constrained the x and y axis, it's because that if I hadn't, then this constraint will allow me to move that particular interactable in the x and y axis freely, and only apply the constraint on the z axis. And that would have been not the purpose for this particular example, where I want to have linear motion of this interactable. But again, this is not constrained to a linear axis. You can have multiple axis setup as well. So think of a drawer or anything that you may have in your VR app. So there you go, we got our first translate interactor working. Alright, so now let's set up our next set of transformer, which is called a rotate transformer, and let's see how we can use it in our VR app. So again, to give you a subjective example of it, or where it may be useful, that I've created a simple setup for a lever system. Again, this is a kind of rotational lever you may have in some sort of VR games or in apps. You can also use it on door mechanics for car doors or room doors, windows. But for now, I think this will be a better use case for me to do. So the only thing that I've added is that I've added these individual lever visuals. Again, these are the simple game objects with mesh renderer and the same material applied onto it. So the way this is set up, the rotate transformer is set up is, first let me remove the translate transformer and double check that the reference has been removed. Let us add the one grab rotate transformer to it and assign it to the one grab transformer. Okay, so the rotate transformer has constraints as well as two new fields to look at. One is this rotational axis, and another one is this pivot transform or pivot transform. Now you may call it whatever you need. So the rotational axis allows us to define in what axis we want rotate or interactable rotate to, and the pivot allows you to define a third transform that you want your rotational to be offset from. So for this lever, I think the pivot will be a better use case to show. So I'll create an empty game object called pivot, and make sure that the pivot exists outside of the interactable and not on the interactable, inside the interactable, otherwise you may see some unintentional rotations. So let me just quickly position the pivot transform under the root of this lever where I want the rotation to apply from. You can use the grids, the snap settings in Unity, but I think I'll just eyeballing it. Alright, once the pivot has been set up, let's add it to the optional pivot transform. And if I click on the pivot, I want to define the rotation constraint on the x-axis only, so that will be our right axis. So let's define or set up the rotational axis to be the right. And for the min and max angle, what I will do is that I will move the pivot and rotate it. I just accidentally moved the grab interactable. Let me move it out of it. Alright, so let me go into rotate mode on the pivot. So you can hit E for it on the keyboard, and that will give you this rotational gizmo. And we want to move it on the X. So you may not see it if the axis is set to global, but you can just use this gizmo again. I think I will go from -60 or -60 on the minimum axis and 60 on the maximum axis for the lever to work. Alright, so let's define the min and max angle to -60 and the max angle to 60. Alright, that defined our constraint for the grab interactor. Make sure the one grab transformer is assigned again. Now let's do the same thing for the hand grab transformer. Again, create a pivot, and I'll just fast forward to where I've set up the pivot as well as the rotations. For the hand interaction, I have it on the right axis. That means I want the movement to happen on the Z axis. That means the forward axis. Alright, so I'll assign the rotate transformer to the one grab transformer. Double check the max interactor set to 1 or at least 1, and I'll also set it to, I think, -60 to +60 on the Z. And again, double check on the grabbable, the transform is set. Alright, so now we have set up our second rotate transformer, and let's see it in the action. Alright, let's see how the rotational constraint works, and indeed I can move it on the defined axis on the pivot transform. So I can rotate it, and I can leave it at any point in that particular range of rotational axis, but I cannot go beyond that. And that's how we set up our rotational constraints for our controller. Now let's double check the hand interactions, make sure they do work in the same way. So I can grab it and I can move it left to right. Also, if you're wondering, I agree that they do look like small versions of Mjolnir, Thor's Mjolnir, and you have to just take my word on it, they are not Thor's Mjolnir, otherwise we may never move it because we are not worthy of it. Alright, that's how you set up your rotational transforms constraints. Alright, moving on to the next. Now we are going to take a look at two grab transformers. So unlike the one grab transformers, the two grab transformer allows you to grab an interactable using two hands or two interactors at the same time. So I have created these three variants of it to show you different types of grab transformers. And if you remember, by default, if you don't have any transformer assigned, Unity assigns a one grab free transformer to allow us to grab an interactable using one hand. And And similar to the one graph free transformer, we have something called two graph free transformer. We also have two graph plane and rotate, which we'll look into next videos. But first, let's assign the two graph free transformer to the two graph transformer. Make sure you add it to two graph and not one graph transformer reference. The way the script works is that it allows us to freely grab something, but also it allows us to scale the same interactable on XYZ axis. So if we now hit play, you'd see that there are no more one graph free transformer automatically assigned to the graph interactable, and that's by design. So you may feel like it's not, but it's by design. And the reason behind that is that you may or may not want your interactor or interactable to be grabbed by one hand or two hands simultaneously. So in order for the two graph free transformer to work correctly, make sure to set the max selector interactors on the graph interactable either to -1 or at least 2. So sometimes people miss that, and that's something crucial to know, that you can set the max selecting interactors. If you don't set it, the two graph interactions may not work properly. Alright, so let me just apply a scale constraint to all the three axes, and I will scale it from minimum 1 unit to 2 unit at max. So I'll set the minimum to 1 and 2 as the max, and I'll check all the three scales, constraint XYZ. And the second thing that I wanted to show you is that what I talked just now. So let me just create a two graph free transformer again, scale it on constraint all the XYZ scale to move or scale accordingly, and I'll assign the two graph free transformer. But now I'll also create a one graph free transformer, so that I can grab the same particular interactable with one and two hand at the same time. So we can do that as well, and make sure the max selecting interactors for the two graph interactor to work is either set to -1 or 2 at max. So since I set the first one to -1, I'll set it to 2 so that you would know that this indeed works. So -1 means you can set it to you can have multiple, like as many max interactors as you may have. So let me quickly assign the two graph free transformer again for the hand interactable. So you may want to pause the video if you want to follow up or do it on your own, but let me just quickly do the same steps. Also in the hand grab interactable, make sure you set it to -1 or 2 at max. I'll set it to -1 since I already have the 2 to show you on the middle interactable. Alright, now we have our app build, and you can see I cannot grab the first interactable with one grab or one interactor, neither from the left or right. But if I select the same interactable with both the grab from controller, I can move it. And as you can see, if I move away my controllers, I'm scaling the interactable to max 2 units as I set in the constraint. So this is the two grab free transformer, which allows you to scale or grab an interactable with two interactors at the same time. You cannot grab it with one interactor, and that's as I said, is by design. So this is how you create your two grab transformer to scale something or grab and scale something. Again, this was the one that we added, the one grab free transformer as well as two grab free transformers, so we can grab it with one hand. And similarly to the first one, we can also scale it using two interactors or two grab interactors. So this is more flexible, and I think this is the one you're going to use the most based on your use case. But yeah, this is another option you can have. So this is for the hand interactable. This is again set to only have two interactors at once, so I cannot grab it with one of them. So I have to use both the pinch gestures to grab it together, and again scale it up and down to the max to 1 and 2 units. Alright, and this is how we have set up our two hand free grab interactors, transformers. Alright, moving on to the next one, which is called a two grab plane transformer, which I think is the most confused transformer that we have in MetaXR interaction SDK. So for now, let me just rename the text to mention that these are indeed plane transformers. And the reason I'm saying is because the plane transformers acts relative to a plane. And let me show you. Let me just add the toGraph plane transformer script and drag and drop it onto the toGraph transformer reference field. And the way it works, also make sure to check the max select interactors to 2 or -1. I'll leave it as 2. And the way it works is that it has the set of constraints, and the optional one sets or allows you to provide a particular transform, and that's the plane the whole scaling and the positioning are going to work from. So we have the min y and max y. So that means the minimum y and maximum y according to the plane that we'll be providing, and then we have the scale on that particular axis. So think of it like an invisible plane that you are going to reference from. So if you don't have any plane, it's going to take the same position as of the interactable. But for now, to show you how this works, I'll create an actual literal plane and I'll quickly scale it down and position it on the first interactable. Do keep in note that the length and breadth or the dimension of the plane doesn't matter. It's only the normal of the plane, or the plane in where the plane is actually facing from, or the facing on the normal of the plane. So remember that. So I just shortened the plane so that I can have a material applied to it. So let me just drag and drop the first plane, toGraph plane, onto this transformer. And okay, I got it here set up. Let me rename the second one to be hand graph plane so that I don't confuse the same plane for the other interactable or the transformer you're going to add in next. Alright, so let me just constrain it similar to how we constrained the scale in the previous transformer. Okay, I want it to be at max of 1.5. Let me just make it 2. Yeah, it doesn't matter, you can scale it. So since the plane is flat as of the table, so you won't see much of a difference though. But I will show you what the actual difference of using the plane is. So the min y and max y I want to have again. So I'll copy the current mean value that I have, and I'll set an y value based on the height. And do remember that I'm using I'm using the height, but the height won't work as we are suspecting it to work, or intending it to work, and I'll show you why in a second. Okay, next let's add in the plane transformer again for the hand interactable. Drag and drop the second plane that we created. Again, add it to the grabbable reference. Make sure the hand interactable is set to 2 interactors at max, or max selecting interactors, for the toGraph plane transformer to work. Again, I'll scale it to the same values, or I'll set it to 0.8 or 2. And also the min y and max y, I'll take the same min y and max y as I did with the previous one. But again, this again won't work as we expect it to be. So it will. So the way it doesn't work, or the way what I'm saying is doesn't work, is that it's going to take the plane into account, and everything that you set, the values or the scale are going to be relative to that plane normal direction. So let me just quickly apply a material to this plane so that we would know where the plane exists. Alright, now since we have the plane transform, let's see how we can grab and move it. Okay, the first thing that you would notice is that although I can grab with both hands, I cannot move it in any of the y direction. Although I can move the up and down, like move the cube up and down on the plane, like relative to the plane, but I cannot move it to the max y that we set, and that's by design. So the plane transform is being taken into account, and the min y and max y that is set is relative to the plane particular position or the normal. So that's why we are not able to move it up and down, but also we can only move it on the plane. Let's see how this inclined hand interactor plane interactor actually works. Again, same thing, I can scale it, but I cannot move it up and down. Although I can move it further and back because that's where the plane normal is facing. And you can see I can move it a little bit down, and as I'm moving it closer to the plane, it's taking that angle into account. And you can see that although it's not that much visible, but you can see that how the movement has been. So it's taking the plane normal into account to use the min y and max y. So that means the min y and max y is based on the plane normal. I can move it on the plane axis, but I cannot move it up and down. So that's what the plane transformer is about. So there are very specific use cases about it. You may or may not never use it, but it's good to know. Alright, so coming back to our final transformer, which is called the 2-grab rotate transformer, and it's same to the previous non-physics one. The only change I did was to add a cylinder with scaled down version of it, so that they would look like something as a disk, and I updated the interactive debug visual to be applied on the cylinder, and disable the cube mesh and the collider that we had, because the collider exists on the cylinder now. Alright, let's add the 2-grab rotate transformer script onto it, and similar to the 1-grab rotate transformer, we want to rotate the first disk in kind of a steering wheel style. So we will rotate it on the on the up axis where it's pointing from, and in that direction. So for that, what we're going to need is a pivot, and we'll be using this pivot to position it exactly at the rotational route of where we want the rotation to start from. And I'll also group them, group the interactable and pivot together under a single game object to keep my hierarchy clean. Also make sure the pivot exists outside of the 2-grab rotate. So I'm just quickly going to position the pivot and rotate it to face its upward y-axis in the same direction of rotation. I have the visual rotated, as you could see, it's set to -45. But if you want, you can still have the whole interactable rotated. But do keep in mind that if you do that, then the rotation will apply relative to that previous rotation you already had on the interactable. So that's something you may want to keep in mind, which may be or may not be desirable according to your use case. But for this one, since I only want to rotate the disk from where it is, I don't want to have any rotation applied to the main interactable. Alright, let's drag and drop the pivot transform, and we would like to rotate it on the y-axis. So I'll be doing it from -45 to +45. I think that should give me a good rotate amount on each of the side, and the rotational axis is set to up. Just drag and drop the 2-grab rotate transformer on the grabbable, and make sure the max selecting interactors is set to at least 2. Let's do the same thing for the hand grab rotation. So I'll create again another group and position place the hand grab as well as the pivot in that particular game object and position it. The only catch, or the only thing that I wanted to show you in this, that I will be rotating it along the x-axis and not on the y-axis. So I'm setting it to right, and the maximum and minimum angle is set to 45. And also add to the hand transformer instance and just adjust the canvas. So let's say in the build. Alright, we got our build installed. So let's check out the first transformable, which again I cannot grab and rotate it with one hand or one controller, but as soon as I grab with both hands, you can see I can rotate it similar to a steering wheel or some sort of wheel lever that you may have in your VR app. So it's a good use case to use these rotate transformers for that particular use case. So As you can see, it's following my hand movement. Although that was simple, let me show you why I have had this to rotate sideways. So as you can see, when I'm grabbing it, it's kind of behaving really funny, and you might think that this is a bug, but no, this is something that's by design. So since the rotational axis is set to right, and the way the rotational script works is that it requires the relative angle between both the hands. So you have to apply opposite force on both of the hands, and now you got the disc moving. And that's something I have seen many developers confusing themselves and thinking the script is not working as intended, but this is by design. And if you are moving the same rotational, like if I'm doing the same rotation hands on with both, it doesn't work. But as soon as I'm grabbing and applying opposite force from each of the hand, you can see it is indeed working as it's supposed to be. So the script has been designed in that particular way, because if you are moving something with two hands, you need to apply opposite force as we do in real world. So it's something to keep in mind with implementing two grab rotational or rotation transformables or transformers. Alright, so with this series of transformers, we completed our whole grab interaction that is provided by Meta SDK. Learn about how we can have controller grab, hand grab, and also restricted grab interactions for our objects or interactables in our VR app. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with for your own VR app and how you use these tools to create your own VR experiences. If you have found this video useful, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so. Also feel free to leave a comment, can be a doubt or can be anything. I would love to read and reply to each one of you. Again, I hope you all enjoyed this tutorials or all the tutorials on the channel this far. If you have, and consider subscribing to the channel. Alright, and that will be it for this video guys. I'll see you in the next one.